Well, good evening, and thanks for joining us for Todd Klindt's SharePoint podcast number 263, recorded live on Monday, October 5th, 2015. I am your host, and I'm very glad to be here, Todd Klindt. Now, before we get started, in the chat room before the podcast, we were talking about flags and things like that, and we've noticed that we've got another flag over here. That all comes from the fine folks at Rackspace. You can go to sharepoint.rackspace.com to see about all the cool SharePoint offerings that my benevolent employer offers, and there's some chats there's some videos, all kinds of great stuff. You can also go out to www.rackspace.com/Microsoft if you are of the Microsoft variety. And you don't just do SharePoint, because it's all kind of mixed together these days. There's, getting chocolate and people's peanut butter and things like that. If you do other things like Exchange or Skype for Business or Azure, the /Microsoft URL has a list of all of our other offerings and all the great ways that you can take advantage of Rackspace. Whatever your Microsoft-centric needs are, we will take care of it. And we're continuing to add things. I can't say anything, but there's always cool stuff coming down. So check those things out. And while you're out there hitting the web, firing up your favorite browser, Lynx or Slipnear or whatever one you're using, fire it up again and go to toddklindt.com/blog. That's where you'll find all of my blog posts, all of my podcast notes, and all that kind of stuff. You can go out to Twitter, find me at Todd Klindt, twitter.com/Todd Klindt. And I'm just all over the internet. Just go out there, Google for me, Bing for me, whatever the kids are using, DuckDuckGo, all those. You can just find me by looking for my name. So I'm out there all over the internet. For production notes, not much. Everything came up pretty good. I did find out by accident that I published the wrong version of my video. I found that out this morning. I have a template that I use in Camtasia that has the intro and all that and the fades and all those things set up. And one of the things that I have is a placeholder for the title and the number. And somehow I rendered the video out, changed the title, added the date and the title name and all that kind of stuff, but didn't render it out again, and then accidentally published the wrong version of the video. And so today Lori commented on that and noticed on YouTube that it said podcast XXX and title goes here. So on my template, I'm going to change that to Todd forgot to change the title, and we can go from there. But so publish those out. Fortunately, those problems don't affect the audio, so you audio listeners didn't have to worry about that. But I did change the video out. If you've got it on the RSS feed, there was a new one out there today. If you watched it on YouTube, it's a new one. It's the same title and all that, but it's a different URL. YouTube won't let you use the same URL if you change the video. I guess they don't want you rickrolling people, so the video did change. But I did change my blog post and all that. So, but other than that, I think production went pretty well. I don't remember anything being a problem. Hopefully, we'll keep up the good work this week. Nothing going on, so we should be fine. Okay, for topics, we have a wide variety of topics tonight. Not a lot of SharePoint specific stuff, a couple of things, but a wide variety of things. First off, I know you're all clamoring to tell me about how much you loved the Martian movie this weekend. So those of you who've been listening to the podcast for a while know that I'm a big fan of the book, The Martian, and was super excited, like running around like a little dog, wetting himself on the floor, excited when I heard they were going to make a movie about it. And the months have just drug on until Friday night. Finally, the culmination of all those months of anticipation. It was glorious. So The Martian, for those of you that haven't listened to me talk about it on the podcast or have been living under some kind of a rock, is a book about a man who is part of a Mars expedition from NASA, the third manned expedition to Mars. And by accidentally, he's left alive on the planet. They think that he's killed, and they leave without him. And the whole book and the movie is about him trying to stay alive long enough for them to figure out how to rescue him. And the book was great. So the book was written by a guy named Andy Weir, who near and dear to my heart is a computer nerd, though I think he's a developer, but I'm able to look over that because it's a good book. He'd written a book before that shopped into a bunch of the publishing houses and basically told him to go fly a kite, that they weren't interested in his book. He was a terrible writer, horrible burden on his mother, his belly button stuck out too far, just a whole bunch of terrible things. And when he got the idea to write The Martian, he decided not to go through all that pain again, and he just published it out on a blog. Got a WordPress blog or whatever, and published it out there, and published it chapter by chapter and let people read it for free. And people loved it, and there was much cheering and adulation. And people said, you know, Andy Weir, this Martian story you've got, this is some good stuff, but it's a real pain to read on your blog. You should publish it out to something like the Kindle. And he said, I've never done such a thing, but I'm willing to look into it. And so he rewrote it and formatted it, and I feel his pain on all this, and published it on the Kindle. But since Amazon makes their money by taking a slice of the sale, you can't just give it away. The least you can have something on the Kindle be is 99 cents. So that's what he charged for his book, because really he just wanted to get it out there so people could read it. And it sold like gangbusters. Billions and billions and squillions of them sold. Everybody loved it. He was carried around on people's shoulders. And then Hollywood came calling, and they made the movie. Now, the movie was a pretty good movie, had a few people you may have heard in it. The main character, Mark Watney, the protagonist, was played by a guy, Matt Damon. You may have heard of him, been in a couple of little things before this. He plays the main star, and it's kind of a cross between like Tom Hanks and Castaway, because he's on the planet by himself for quite a while. But then there's a whole bunch of other people. There's the crew that left him behind. There's Michael Pena, Jessica Chastain, Kate Mara, just all kinds of, just everybody. Jeff Daniels is in it. Just a great story, great book. So the movie came out Friday, and I, of course, had to go immediately. Threatened to leave my wife here if we couldn't get a sitter, because I was going to go. The movie was really good. As anytime you watch a movie or TV show based on a book, you run the risk of being really disappointed. And I was not this time. The book was pretty good, and the movie was really faithful to the book. My only criticism, I guess, or not even a criticism, but acknowledgement, is that the movie was 2 hours and 10 minutes long, something like that. And it just wasn't as intense as the book. But it's because they couldn't be. They just didn't have enough space. So his loneliness on the planet wasn't as intense. His smart aleckness was not as intense. The dread of everything going wrong wasn't quite as intense. But it was all because of time. But it was a great movie. It was opened up number one at the box office. The last I saw, it was the second highest grossing October release movie of all time. So that's good. Good on those guys. I really want this to do well for Andy Weir, and I love the story. I love, being self-published and all that. And I've seen a lot of interviews with Andy Weir. He's a real down-to-earth guy. So I just love seeing it all. So I saw that. If you haven't seen The Martian, go out right now, watch The Martian. Let's try to make sure that it's number 2, and all that. Lori's asking if my self-published book is going to be a movie. Probably not. But I think, sticking with the trend, I think Matt Damon would be a good cast for me. I think people are always telling me how I look like Matt Damon. So I think that would be a good fit if they were going to make my self-published book a movie. And I would probably charge less than Andy Weir charged. I'm sure I hope he got one of those huge Publishers Clearinghouse checks. I would ask for a much smaller, legal size check, maybe something like that. So Joanne is asking if they gave Andy Weir, the author, a cameo in the movie. I didn't see one. I didn't see anything about that. That would have been a good idea, though. It was funny. So I saw one interview with him, and this was many, many months ago. The interviewer was asking him, because he'd been on set and all that. He said, are you out there on set? Ridley Scott directed it. Obviously, Matt Damon starred in it, and said, were you out there being in there, telling him how to make the movie, giving him your vision? And he's like, no, this is Ridley Scott and Matt Damon. I have nothing to tell these guys about making movies. I have nothing to offer. They've got a million times more experience than this. He's like, so I just stood back, shook a few hands, got a few pictures taken. He's like, and my only job with all this now is to just sit back and cash those checks. So I'm just completely hands off. So I don't know if he didn't want to do a cameo or something. That's pretty common though. But I didn't see anything. But that would have been great if he would have had some kind of a cameo. But good book, good movie. You can get The Martian out on the Kindle now. I recommend it. It's a great book. It's not a long read. You could probably knock it off in a day, 6-7 hours, something like that. So I highly recommend that. I've not yet talked to a person who has read the book and went, meh, It was okay. Haven't met that person yet. I'm sure they're out there. I'm not challenging anybody, but I just have not heard that yet. Everybody seems to have loved it, and the movie seems to have been pretty popular too, even with people who haven't read the book. So enough about that. I could gush on about that. We could chat about it and all the mechanics and the science and. But good book. So we'll get that out of the way. The other non-technical, non-nerdy thing that I wanted to bring up. Lori and I were chatting on IM today, just doing our thing, twirling our hair, talking about boys and movies and all that kind of stuff. And she mentioned that we're getting towards the end of the year and it's time to start thinking about the big charity drive that we always do, or she always does, and I help with, or however we want to say that. So that's going to be coming up. And usually the culmination of this is on my birthday, so, and that's in January, so we've got a while to go. But Lori starts taking people's names and contributions and all that ahead of time, so that website will be coming up soon. So start thinking about that. So start saving your bottles, and you can redeem and any change you've got in your couches. I guess a big thing now is, selling copper, things like that. So any of that kind of stuff, start saving that up. And here within the next month or so, we'll probably start hitting that hard. For those of you that haven't been part of the charity drive before, I don't know, back when this podcast started in 2009, we were just coming out of the global recession. Things were still kind of ugly. And for whatever reason, doing this podcast and hanging out with you SharePoint folks made me realize that there were a lot of people that were hurting, and I was in a pretty good spot. I had stumbled butt first into a great technology, and it was treating me well. And there were a lot of people that didn't have it as well as I did. So I kind of started focusing more on giving back and giving to charity. And there's a couple of local food pantries and some other things, a couple of charities in my hometown that I give to. And so I just kind of talked about that a little bit the first year or so of the podcast, trying not to be preachy because I hate that, but brought it up a few times. And Lori Gowan and Dan Usher kind of picked up on that. And when my next birthday rolled around, they thought a very fitting birthday present would be to have a big charity drive and get a bunch of people to give money to whatever their favorite charity was. Didn't need to be my charities, whatever charity, if you know somebody who's had ALS, give some money to that, March of Dimes, whatever, it's all good stuff. And they kind of tallied it all up and said, here are people that we talked to that gave some money to charities. And so Lori's saying in the chat room that it was Red Cross the first year, it was after the earthquake. And so just as kind of a thing to say, hey, there's some people out there that have heard your call to be charitable, and they did that. So every year we've done that. Every year we've gotten in more and more money. At some point, it's going to have to plateau because you guys gave a crap ton of money last year. It was amazing. Lori set up a goal. I can't remember what it was, and you guys blew through it. And so she had to set up another goal, and I think you hit that one too. And so it's good stuff. Way back in the early days, I used to match all the charitable donations that you guys would give. So that first year, I don't remember, it was like $250, $300, $500. I don't remember that you all raised for the Red Cross. And so I matched it and gave it to the Red Cross. I can't afford to do that anymore because you guys are giving too much money. But it's a very good thing. Look forward to that. That's going to be coming up. So last year, so Lori had a URL, which I forgot if she posted in the chat room. That'd be great, where she tallied all that. Last year, we gave just shy, you guys, without any help from me, gave just shy of $2,500. So that's crazy. And that was just last year. So, but that's coming up. And we'll hit that a little bit more. So on to, now I'm going to start tearing up. I get all weepy when I talk about this. Now, let's get on to some fun technical stuff. So today is Monday, October 5th. So it just stands to reason that tomorrow will be Tuesday, October 6th. And Microsoft for the last few weeks has been talking about having a big Windows 10 event in New York City. And unfortunately, by the time this thing gets produced and put out, and the wrong version put out and pulled down, and the right version put out and all that, it'll be long past Tuesday the 6th. But I did want to talk about that a little bit because I'm excited about this. They're going to be announcing all new hardware, all new fun stuff. So it looks like the new Lumia phones, the CityMan, and all that are going to be coming out. Are going to be announced, at least. We don't know for sure. Maybe Windows 10 for phone will be officially launched tomorrow. There's been some speculation about that. We don't know. But new phones will be released, new updated Microsoft Band. So there have been some leaked photos of that. I am one of the happy Band owners, and I've talked about the Band a bunch on this podcast. I do look forward to the new version. It's going to be a little less clunky looking. This looks like something that came out of Soviet Russia in the late 60s, early 70s. It's kind of got that utilitarian style to it, but I do like it. I use it a lot. It's a great running device. It's great for getting texts and all that kind of stuff. The Android integration is not as good as the Windows Phone integration, which kind of surprises me a little bit, but I look forward to the Band 2 to see what new functionality it's going to have. It's got a little more rounded look to it. Hopefully it'll hold up a little better. The first band seems to fall apart on people sometimes. So we're going to have some of those. Also going to be some other new devices coming out, some tablet-y things. I'm hearing some discussions about a Surface 4, potentially the Quattro. So be curious to see what all comes out with that. I've kind of been on and off. I've kind of done the every other version of the Surface. I got the Surface RT and the Surface Pro. Never used the Surface Pro. I still have the Surface RT over there. I actually have interacted with that in the last couple of weeks, but didn't use that much. Surface Pro 2, when that came out, that was my daily driver up till a few months ago, and it treated me pretty well, and I liked that. But I quit using it because the hardware just couldn't keep up with what I wanted to do. Mainly the most memory you could have in a Surface Pro 2 or 3 for that matter is 8 gig, and that just doesn't cut it anymore. It's just not enough for doing having multiple browsers, things like that. I'm doing this podcast now. I've got a lot of things shut down so that my machine doesn't have a lot going on. I'm using 9.5 gig right now, and that's with a bunch of things shut down. So 8 gig just wasn't cutting it. I've heard some rumors that maybe the Surface Pro 4 will support up to 16 gig of RAM. That would be outstanding if that happened. I might be able to switch back to it as a daily driver. But that's then some of the rumors have been the Surface Pro devices, other tablets, things like that. So that happens tomorrow, which of course is like 4 or 5 days ago by the time you actually listen to this, in the morning. And I'm very excited to hear about that. We'll see what they have talked about. And then next week, I'll talk about what those new devices are, which of the ones of them I have ordered, all that kind of stuff, because I'm sure I will not be able to say no to those devices when they come out. So looking forward to all of that. So the next thing is, well, and I haven't covered this in here just because I kind of wasn't sure what to cover on it. But last week or the week before, sometime in the pretty recent past, Office 2016, the client, was released and came out. And so that's, Word and Office and all that. And I've upgraded a few boxes to that, and it's mostly okay. It's got one crazy feature. I love this. Oh my God, I love this so much. I could kiss it. If you have Outlook 2016, and let me open it up because we're going to talk about this, but now it's in here. If you've got Outlook 2016, when you start a new email, you've got all the stuff, but in the menu bar up top, if you go to attach file, it shows you a list of all your recent files. Oh my God, I love that, because how often is this exactly your workflow? You're working on a PowerPoint presentation, you're working on a Word document, an Excel document, something like that, Fox Pro document, whatever kids are working on these days. You close it out and then immediately jump in and want to email it to somebody. Now, when you do that, when you open up that new email, the attach file dropdown has all the recent files that you've been working on. Oh my God, I love that. That's the greatest thing ever. And then Word has some Dropbox integration too. That's pretty nice. But the Office 2016 clients are out. I've been using them. They've been treating me pretty well. No complaints. But for us SharePoint folks, there's a couple of Office clients that have had a rough couple of years. I'm talking about SharePoint Designer and a little program called InfoPath. Now, InfoPath, we know that was kind of the InfoPath client was kind of the cornerstone of Microsoft's Forms story. But now we really don't know what the Forms story is. There was InfoPath, and then InfoPath's dead, and then we're going to replace InfoPath with Forms on SharePoint lists, or fossils, but then Fossil got killed, and now there's something else, but we don't know what it is. So we don't know what the Form story is for SharePoint 2016. But what we do know is that it will support all of the InfoPath things from SharePoint 2013. So what then you need is InfoPath client, but there is no InfoPath client 2016. So this week, Microsoft announced that you can download InfoPath 2013. Is now available as a standalone download. And I see that I pasted that twice in my notes, which is why I stumbled on that. And so you can install Office 2016, get all the great drop-down stuff from Outlook, and then install InfoPath 2013 for free, sort of. And it is licensed based on Office 365. So you need to have, so to run InfoPath 2013, you need a regular license or whatever. But if you do this standalone download, it's going to require an active Office 365 Pro Plus subscription. But it's good that Microsoft's looking out for us and helping out with that. Okay. This is one that I was super excited to find here a week or so ago out on my favorite tech sites. And I go to a bunch of tech sites and I use News 360 to aggregate a bunch of my tech sites. And I find all kinds of stuff. And this is something I found on News 360, but it was how to reduce the Windows 10 footprint on your computer. Now, those of you that have been with the podcast for a while, you know that I have a problem. Well, truth be told, I have many problems, but one of the problems that I talk about on this podcast is my addiction to little, adorable little tablets. And without exaggerating, within arm's reach that I could touch without stretching anything, I can touch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Windows tablets and 1, 2 other little devices, the little standalone HDMI devices that run Windows 8 and 10 and all that. I have a bit of a problem. And I've upgraded all of them, I believe all of them, all of them to Windows 10. Now, a couple of these devices, what I liked about them is they were cheap. They were like $79, $100, something like that. And for a lot of them, it was because they had small drives. Some of them have 32 gig drives. Some of them have 16 gig drives. They all came with Windows 8.1. And Windows 8.1 had this feature called Wim Boot, where it used your recovery partition as your Windows partition, which was pretty ingenious because it lets you use that space twice. But what it didn't handle very well is updates. You could never update that Wim Boot part. So as Windows updates came out, that just kept getting fuller and fuller until that 16 gig drive filled up. For Windows 10, they removed Wim Boot. Wim Boot's not there. And there's a couple of different things that they do to try to keep the size down. But I have a couple of these 16 gig tablets that keep getting full. And so I can't, download all my pictures of cats doing funny things and all that. The drive gets full. So I ran across this article last week about how to reduce your footprint. And it's working pretty well so far. Let me see if I've pasted it in there or not. I have not pasted it in there yet. Okay. So it all hinges on using the compact command. You may remember the compact command from such operating systems as Windows 8.1, Windows 7, probably Windows NT. Compact is the command that you use from the command line to compress files, and it's been around forever. New in Windows 10 is a new switch, Compact OS. What do we think that switch will do? It does exactly what you think it will do. It goes through and compresses the OS files for your operating system. So the /compact OS has a few switches that you can run. The first one that I ran, well, I did a / first to see everything, the new switches, but then I ran one called Compact OS Query, and I don't know if you're going to be able to read that here. There we go. Yep. And so that tells you the state of whether your OS has been compacted with compact or not. Mine says the system is not in the compact state because Windows has determined that it is not beneficial for this system. Bullpucky. This system has a C drive that has 4 gig free on it. If anybody was ever a candidate for that, it was this machine. So I decided to just drive ahead because, again, if I kill this tablet, and Jared Shockley in the chat room may recognize this tablet. If I screw this tablet up, I've got like 4 tablets within arm's reach that I can replace it with. So I did the old up arrow and I gave it a compact OS : always. And so the machine started churning through and compacting the OS files. The stuff that I read online, so that would take 10 to 20 minutes. This is a box with a 16 gig drive, 2 gig of RAM, and an Intel 3735F processor. One of the slowest machines to man. It took about an hour for this thing to run. When it got through, it had compacted 22,000 files, and saved me a little over, about almost 2 gig of space. So I went from having 4 something to 6 something. So 2 gig of space, 2 gig of space on a 16 gig drive is pretty good. And it tells me at the end the compact ratio is now 1.6 to 1. And when you do some of the other commands, it told me that it was 1 to 1. So that was, and the good news is, so now we've got a machine with restricted hardware, right? It's got a weak processor, it's got crappy RAM, its mother doesn't love it, it's just got a lot of things working against it. So let's say I compress all this and find out that it just can't keep up, that the decompression of the OS is too much for it. No problem. I can just go back up and set that compact OS to never, and it will decompress all those files and leave it back the way that it was. So if you've got some of these little devices, I plan on running this on a few of them to see how much it helps. But if you've got one of these devices with small amounts of hard drive space, or if you've got a full machine but have an SSD and want a couple of gig back, you can do the regular cleanup stuff that will clean up all that. But this is just another level of way to get some space back. So that was a good one. I would be curious to see if you guys have tablets out here, if you use that, and how it works for you. Okay, finally, we'll wrap this up. A couple of weeks ago, I started the PowerShell Tip O the week, and I did not want to skip that this week. So first, I wanted to mention last week's tip of the week was adding parameters to your PS1 files, I believe. Let me find, yep. And I don't think I mentioned that will also tie into podcast 260, where I talked about snippets inside of the ISE. So if you're wanting to do the parameters in your PS1 files, like I talked about in podcast 262, you can use the snippets that I talked about in podcast 260 to get that framework set up for you. So that's kind of nice. You can set all that up. The tip that I want to mention this week is about error checking, and that is something that none of us do well enough in our PowerShell scripts. None of us do well enough in our programming or any of that error checking. And so one of the next frontiers I've been doing with my PowerShell scripts is putting in more error checking. And that can be kind of tricky. We all know of different tricks, but getting them all to work at the same time is kind of tough. And one of them that I keep having to learn the hard way is the difference between a blocking and an unblocking error. So we've all seen this. You've got a bunch of PowerShell, and sometimes when a PowerShell command doesn't work, it just kills your script dead, splat, red text all over the screen, and everything just grinds to a halt. That is a blocking error. But sometimes when the command fails, it throws red text on the screen and it just keeps charging on. And normally that command is important, or you wouldn't have had it in there in the first place. And then the rest of your script fails and there's more blah, blah, blah. So that's an unblocking error. It's not blocking the rest of the program. Those unblocking errors get tough to do error checking on because, again, they don't stop the program. So it's tough to get things wrangled and error out gracefully. So today's PowerShell tip of the week is to kind of read up again on the difference between blocking and unblocking errors. And again, an unblocking error is one of them where you want it to stop, but it doesn't stop and it keeps going. That's an unblocking error. So the thing that you can do to handle that is at the end of the command, every PowerShell command has a bunch of default parameters. One of them is error action, and that tells the commandlet what to do if there's an error. Sometimes there's continue normally, silently continue. One of them is stop, and that's how you can turn this unblocking error into a blocking error by giving it -error action stop. And then that will make that error bring your script to a halt. And then that lets you do some error checking on it. The other thing that you should do is use try catch blocks. So a try block says, PowerShell, I want you to try something. I'm going to put it inside this block. And if everything goes terrible, if the wheels fly off and everything bursts into flames, instead of just throwing crap all over the screen and being ugly, execute the stuff in this catch block. Catch the error and do something with it. Give the user some information about what's going on and throw it into that catch block. And I've been building those into my scripts lately, and it's really been helpful. It's helping me think through the errors that are going to happen, because you can have multiple catch blocks and you can have a catch block for a specific error. So for instance, you could run something that says, get SP site, and if the site doesn't exist, give one error message. If the site exists but the person doesn't have access to it, give another error message. If the command fails because the PowerShell commandlets aren't loaded, give a different error message. things like that. You can have multiple catch blocks and catch on the type of error. And then if you have code that you want to run, regardless of whether the command ran or not, then there's also a finally block at the end that you can put. And the great thing about this is, for most of us, adding all this thing, now we've got curly brackets and things are important about where they're at, and it gets very overwhelming and very confusing. This is also something that you can do with a snippet. So you can do the whole Control-J thing or right-click snippets, and try catch block is in there. Just drop it right in there in the ISE and then put your code in there. Joanne Klein in the chat room is saying that this sounds very developer-y. It's kind of developer-y. I think of it as scripty, but man, do I feel dirty talking about this, and I'm going to kick this is going to be one of these things I'm going to regret in the morning. But one of the new catchphrases in IT these days, God, I hate the fact that I'm going to say it out loud, but here it is, is DevOps. And while I hate the bandwagony thing, everything's DevOps now, everything's cloud, blah, blah. The idea behind DevOps, that as an IT pro, we need to be able to do some developer-y stuff. This is kind of that. This is very DevOps-y. So now we're writing scripts to do things like build SharePoint farms. I've got a script that whenever I create a new VM, it goes through, because we all, we build VMs, we build them off templates, and then we add multiple drives. Like if I'm creating a SQL VM, I add in a data drive and a log drive and a backup drive and all that. I've got another PowerShell script that I run that just initiates all the drives and formats them. We all need these kind of scripts, and having developer-y stuff, DevOps-y stuff, makes us better admins. I hate to say it. I hate to jump on the DevOps bandwagon, but that's kind of where we're at. But the try catch and the error checking just makes that makes it better. And again, the goal for me whenever I write a script is that I never have to run it, that I write a script and somebody else runs it. And the more error checking there is with better better information, and that helps the people that are running these scripts. So then they don't call me as much, they don't IM me. I can get longer naps at my desk, catch up on all my favorite TV shows easier, that kind of stuff. So think about that. And again, they're easy to throw in. You don't have to worry about the formatting. Just pull up the PowerShell ISE, Control-J for snippets, and it's all right there. And now in the chat room, they're all chanting developer. I don't know what's wrong with you people. I can only assume that you're sitting in your garage with the car on watching this, and that's why you say these weird, hateful things. I don't know. I'm just trying to be a better admin, trying to be a better person. That's all I'm doing. But that's this week's PowerShell Tip O the week. All right, so now we will go on to the shameless self-promotion part. Everybody's favorite part. It's like we're at the end. We're almost done. So again, not a lot going on because we're kind of winding down the end of the year. I do have Dev Intersections later this month in 3 weeks. You can go to devintersection.com and find out all about that. That is October 26th through the 29th. I'll be doing my sessions on Tuesday and Wednesday. I have 3 sessions. On Tuesday, I'm doing my How to Get Everything into Azure AD session. So dir sync and how this works with SharePoint and all these kind of things. Doing that one. Then I'm doing my hybrid search or my hybrid SharePoint session. So this is kind of after you've decided you want to try hybrid, but you don't know what hybrid is, but your boss is screaming about it and you're kind of curious about it. This session's about what your hybrid options are with SharePoint 2013 and 2016. And then Wednesday, I'm doing a session on upgrade migration from so I don't know if it's going to be SharePoint 2010 to 2013. We'll assume that, but maybe 2013 to 2016, we'll have to talk to some folks at Microsoft and see what I can and can't talk about and all that. That will be Wednesday. Thursday, the folks that do the Windows Weekly Show, Mary Jo Foley, Paul Thrott, those guys are going to be at the conference recording Windows Weekly at Dev Intersection. And I think I'm sticking around for that one. I think I'm taking a red eye home that night. I can't remember when all I'm doing that. But if you're going to be at the show, definitely want to catch that. That should be a lot of fun. And also, if you see me at the show, for goodness sakes, come up and introduce yourself to me. Come find me. I'll I'll be walking around. I don't think Rackspace has a booth, but I'll be at my sessions, obviously. I'll be at other people's sessions. I'll be wandering around. So come up, introduce yourself to me. I'm a super friendly guy. I would love to talk to you. And I will be flying on Monday, so I got to figure out when I'm doing the show, things like that. So I will let you know. But that's in 3 weeks. So I'll let you know before that. And then many, many moons from now, February 21st through the 24th is SP TechCon. And that is in Austin, Texas. And you can go to sptechcon.com and find out all about that. I'll be doing some sessions there. I don't remember which ones off the top of my head. I will be doing all mine early in the week because there's actually a Rackspace technical conference that same week. And I'm part of setting that up. And I'm going to be speaking at that. So I need to get down to San Antonio. So I'm very fortunate that that's in Austin, so I can just drive down. So I'll be out there at SP TechCon. So again, if you see me there, by all means, come up and say hey. So that is it for tonight. I'll let you folks, I know in the chat room, I think we're looking at halftime now for the game, or maybe it's picked up now, but we got a bunch of folks who want to do that. I want to go see how that's working. So thank you, everybody. And next week, look forward. I've got a blog post that's in the hopper now that I need to have tech edited and proofread that I'll be talking about, and that will be about the cloud search service application that's new to SharePoint 2013 and 2016. I've got a bunch of stories to tell about that and get that set up. We'll talk about the new hardware and stuff next week. It's going to be a good show. So make some time in your schedule, and I will see you next week. But until then, thanks. Have a good night.